What paths will humanity take in the coming centuries? Look at this moment in time right now, and you're standing at a crossroads unlike any our species has ever faced. The decisions we make in the next few decades will literally shape the trajectory of human civilization for hundreds of years to come. And here's what makes this so fascinating. We're not locked into a single future. We have multiple possible paths stretching out in front of us, each one leading to radically different outcomes. Some of these futures are breathtaking, others are cautionary tales, and many exist somewhere in between. The question isn't whether the future will be determined, it will be. The question is which future we're actually building toward right now, and whether we're making those choices consciously or just stumbling forward hoping things work out. This video examines the most likely scenarios for human civilization, analyzing the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead, and exploring what each of these futures might actually look like. Let's start with what futurists call the sustainable equilibrium scenario. In this future, humanity makes the hard choices now. We transition away from fossil fuels, we stabilize population growth, we develop circular economies where waste becomes a resource rather than a problem. Think about it this way. We're not talking about some utopian fantasy where everything is perfect. We're talking about a world where we've learned to live within planetary boundaries, where technology and nature coexist rather than compete. In this scenario, we've developed renewable energy systems that actually work at scale. We've cracked fusion power or mastered solar and wind efficiency to the point where energy becomes cheap and abundant. Climate change is stabilized, not reversed necessarily, but no longer accelerating toward catastrophe. Cities are redesigned around human flourishing rather than car traffic. We've figured out how to feed 10 billion people without destroying the Amazon rainforest. Agriculture has become regenerative. We're actually improving soil health rather than depleting it. The beautiful thing about this future is that it's not about sacrifice, it's about redesign. It's about realizing that the old industrial model was inefficient and wasteful, and we found better ways to do everything. Quality of life actually improves for most people. We work less because we've automated drudgery. We have more time for creativity, relationships, learning. Mental health improves because we're not grinding ourselves into dust. This future is achievable. It's within reach, but it requires intentional choices, starting right now. Now here's something worth considering. The transition to renewable energy isn't just theoretical. Costa Rica actually ran on 99.6% renewable energy for 76 consecutive days in 2015. That's not a fantasy, that's proof of concept. And yet globally, we're still burning fossil fuels at record rates. Why? Because the infrastructure is already built, because there are massive economic interests invested in the status quo, because changing systems is hard, even when we know the alternative is better. The sustainable equilibrium scenario requires us to overcome institutional inertia on a global scale. It requires governments to make unpopular decisions. It requires corporations to prioritize long-term survival over short-term profits. It requires individuals to change consumption patterns. None of this is impossible, but it does require coordination and sacrifice in the near term for benefits that arrive in the long term. And humans are notoriously bad at that trade-off. We're wired for immediate rewards. We struggle with delayed gratification on a civilizational scale. So, the real question isn't whether the sustainable equilibrium future is possible. It's whether we have the collective discipline to choose it. Now let's examine what happens in the technological acceleration scenario. This is the future where innovation doesn't slow down, it explodes. Artificial intelligence becomes genuinely transformative, not just better at predicting things or processing data, but genuinely creative and useful in ways we can barely imagine right now. Biotechnology advances to the point where we can edit genes not just to cure disease, but to enhance human capability. We're talking about extended lifespans, better cognitive function, resistance to degenerative diseases. Some people in this future live to 120, 150, or beyond. Nanotechnology becomes practical. We can build things atom by atom. We can repair damage at the cellular level. Space exploration accelerates dramatically. We establish permanent settlements on the Moon and Mars. We begin mining asteroids for resources. The resource scarcity that plagues our current world simply disappears because we have access to the mineral wealth of the entire solar system. Energy becomes essentially unlimited through advanced fusion or space-based solar. The economic implications are staggering. Scarcity-based economics doesn't make sense anymore. We shift toward abundance economics. But here's the catch, and this is crucial. Technology doesn't automatically solve the human problems. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. Just because we have the capability doesn't mean we have the wisdom to use it well. In this future, we could end up with massive inequality, where only the wealthy can afford life extension and enhancement. We could create new forms of environmental damage we haven't even imagined yet. We could develop weapons that make previous armaments look quaint. The technology is neutral. What matters is how we choose to deploy it. And that's the tension in this scenario. The possibilities are extraordinary, but so are the risks. Let me give you a concrete example of how this works. In 1900, electricity was invented. It was transformative technology, but it didn't automatically create a better world. In some places, it powered factories that exploited workers. It powered surveillance systems. It powered new forms of control and domination. In other places, it lifted millions out of poverty. It powered hospitals and schools and homes. The technology itself was neutral. What mattered was the social context and the choices people made about how to use it. Artificial intelligence is the same way. It could be used to diagnose diseases earlier and save lives. It could also be used to automate surveillance on a scale that makes previous regimes look quaint. It could be used to optimize resource allocation and eliminate waste. It could be used to concentrate power in the hands of whoever controls the algorithms. The technological acceleration scenario is plausible. We're already seeing the first waves of it. But whether it leads to utopia or dystopia depends entirely on the choices we make right now about how to govern and deploy these technologies. If you're thinking about the future, you're already ahead of most people. Most folks just react to change as it happens. They don't think proactively about where we're heading. But you're here, engaging with these ideas, which means you care about understanding the trajectory of human civilization. And that matters. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need more of. If you want to keep exploring scenarios like this, subscribe to Future Frontiers for more deep dives into where humanity might be headed. Now let's zoom out across the globe and look at the fragmentation scenario. This is the darker path, but it's one we need to take seriously. In this future, we don't solve the coordination problem. Nation-states remain locked in competition. Global institutions fail to prevent conflicts over resources. Climate change drives massive migration. Coastal cities flood. Agricultural zones shift. Hundreds of millions of people are displaced. Instead of cooperating to manage this transition, countries build walls. They close borders. They hoard resources. Some regions become climate havens while others become uninhabitable. We see the rise of warlordism in some areas, authoritarian regimes in others. Technology accelerates inequality rather than solving it. Artificial intelligence is weaponized. Surveillance becomes total. We end up with a patchwork world of competing power centers, each one trying to secure its own survival at the expense of others. This isn't apocalypse fiction. It's a plausible extrapolation of current trends if we don't change course. The good news is that this future isn't inevitable, but it does require us to be honest about where we're headed if we maintain the status quo. The fragmentation scenario is a warning. It's what happens when short-term thinking dominates, when we prioritize quarterly profits over long-term stability, when we treat the planet as an infinite resource, when we fail to build the institutions and agreements necessary for global cooperation. The question is whether we'll take that warning seriously. Here's what makes the fragmentation scenario particularly plausible. We actually have historical precedent for this. Look at the collapse of the Roman Empire. It wasn't a sudden event. It was a gradual fragmentation that took place over centuries. As the central authority weakened, regional powers filled the vacuum. Trade networks broke down. Knowledge was lost. Living standards declined across much of Europe for hundreds of years. We're not saying that's going to happen to modern civilization, but the mechanism is recognizable. When global systems become too stressed and coordination breaks down, you get fragmentation, you get localization, you get conflict over scarce resources. And in the Roman case, the recovery took 1,000 years. That's the stakes we're talking about. Not immediate apocalypse, but the possibility of civilizational decline that spans generations. The fragmentation scenario is driven by specific causes that we can actually identify and address right now. Climate migration, resource depletion, ideological polarization, the breakdown of shared institutions and norms. If we want to avoid this future, we need to start addressing these causes now, not waiting until fragmentation is already underway. Then there's the post-scarcity future, which sits somewhere between the technological acceleration and sustainable equilibrium scenarios. We've actually solved the fundamental problems that have plagued humanity since the beginning. We have enough energy. We have enough resources. We have enough food. Automation and artificial intelligence have eliminated most forms of drudgery. Work as we know it doesn't really exist anymore. People pursue meaningful activities by choice rather than necessity. We've moved beyond money as the primary organizing principle of society. Resources are allocated based on need and contribution, rather than market forces. This sounds utopian, right? And in many ways, it is. But it also requires massive social reorganization. What does meaning look like when you don't have to work for survival? How do we structure society when the traditional employment relationship disappears? How do we maintain the drive for innovation and progress when scarcity no longer forces us to solve problems? Some people thrive in this environment. They become artists, scientists, philosophers, explorers. They pursue knowledge and beauty and meaning. Others struggle. They lose the structure that work provided. They feel adrift. The post-scarcity future is genuinely possible. We have the technological capability to get there. But the social and psychological challenges are immense. We'd have to completely reimagine what it means to be human in a world where survival is guaranteed. We'd have to build new sources of meaning and purpose. We'd have to figure out how to prevent the concentration of power in the hands of whoever controls the automation infrastructure. The post-scarcity future isn't about technology alone. It's about whether we can evolve as a species fast enough to handle the freedom that abundance creates. Consider this counterintuitive point. Historically, abundance has not always made people happier. When people in wealthy nations have more leisure time, they don't automatically become more fulfilled. In fact, studies show that purpose and meaning often come from struggle and contribution, from feeling needed, from working towards something larger than yourself. So the post-scarcity future creates a genuine paradox. We solve the material problem, we eliminate scarcity, we give people unlimited leisure time and resources, but now they have to solve the meaning problem. They have to find reasons to get out of bed that aren't about survival. Some people do this beautifully. They create art, they pursue science, they help others, they explore, they build. But others don't. They struggle, they feel empty. They turn to substances or entertainment or conflict to fill the void. The post-scarcity scenario assumes we'll figure out how to handle this transition, but that's not guaranteed. It's possible that abundance creates new forms of dysfunction that we haven't anticipated. It's possible that the loss of struggle and necessity causes psychological and social problems that are harder to solve than material scarcity ever was. That's the hidden challenge in the post-scarcity future. It's not about whether we can build the technology. It's about whether we can build the society and the psychological framework to handle it. Now here's what ties all of these scenarios together. They're not equally likely. They're not random possibilities. Each one is the result of specific choices and trajectories that are already underway. The sustainable equilibrium future requires us to accelerate certain existing trends: renewable energy adoption, circular economy development, global cooperation on climate. These things are already happening. We just need to do more of them faster. The technological acceleration scenario requires us to remove barriers to innovation and let market forces drive development. That's also already happening. Biotech is advancing, AI is advancing, space exploration is advancing. We're already on this trajectory. We just need to stay the course. The fragmentation scenario requires us to fail at coordination. It requires existing tensions to escalate. It requires institutions to break down. And honestly, we're seeing early signs of that too. Political polarization, trade tensions, climate migration, these are early warning signs. The post-scarcity future requires both technological advancement and social evolution. It requires us to solve material problems and then navigate the psychological and social challenges that come with abundance. That's the hardest one. It requires the most change. It requires us to be intentional about building new social structures and meaning systems. So which future are we actually heading toward? The honest answer is that we're probably heading towards some hybrid version of all of them. Different regions will experience different futures. Some parts of the world might achieve sustainable equilibrium, while others fragment. Some might advance technologically, while others stagnate. Some might develop post-scarcity economics, while others remain trapped in scarcity. We're not going to wake up in 2100 and find ourselves in one of these clean scenarios. We're going to find ourselves in a messy, complicated world where multiple futures exist simultaneously. The wealthy enclaves might look like the post-scarcity future. The middle regions might look like sustainable equilibrium. The conflict zones might look like fragmentation. The technological frontier might look like acceleration, and the lag regions might look like the present day extended into the future. But that doesn't mean our choices don't matter. In fact, it makes them more important, because which hybrid future we get depends on countless individual choices made by billions of people over the next few decades. Every investment decision, every political vote, every consumer choice, every innovation we pursue or abandon, every institution we strengthen or allow to weaken, all of these things are steering us toward one version of the hybrid future or another. So the real question isn't which future will happen. The real question is, which future are we choosing to build? Are we choosing sustainable equilibrium? Are we choosing to embrace technological acceleration? Are we choosing to accept fragmentation? Are we choosing to work toward post-scarcity? Or are we just letting inertia carry us forward and hoping it works out? Because that's also a choice. It's just a passive one. And passive choices often have the worst outcomes. So here we are, standing at the crossroads, looking out at four radically different futures, each one achievable, each one plausible given different choices and circumstances. The sustainable equilibrium path, where we learn to live in balance. The technological acceleration scenario, where innovation transforms everything. The fragmentation future, where competition and conflict dominate. The post-scarcity world, where abundance reshapes human civilization. Which future are we building toward? That's not a question for politicians or corporations or experts. That's a question for all of us. Because every choice we make, every system we support, every technology we develop, it's all steering us toward one of these futures, or some hybrid version of them. The encouraging part is that we're not locked in yet. We still have agency. We still have choices. The future isn't something that happens to us. It's something we create through the decisions we make right now. And that's what makes this moment so significant. Future Frontiers has more on this. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring where humanity might be headed.